But now we present Caroline, Queen of the Pirates, a series in 13 parts in which Dave Windsor traces the history of the world's best-known offshore radio station, Radio Caroline. Episode 8 is called Tuning Around.
Loving awareness, Radio Caroline. Love and good music, Radio Caroline.
Good morning and welcome to another day's broadcasting from Radio Caroline 558. We broadcast from the Ross Revenge, anchored in international waters on the North Sea.
Love and good music, Radio Caroline.
The trial at Southend Magistrates Court in November 1975, following the police raid on the Mi Amigo, was not to be the end of legal wrangles for Caroline. The only difference was that the next time it was to be the Marine Offences Act which fell victim to the lady. The authorities had brought a charge against another DJ, who now explains what happened.
Johnny J. Playing music just for you.
Hello, this is JJ here from Radio Caroline. We've been stuck on the boat for a long, long time. I think it was about 9 weeks, which is, pretty bad, to put it mildly, because we'd been stuck out there through very rough conditions. I think it must have been during winter, because winter on the North Sea is pretty bad. And when a boat eventually came to pick us up, instead of going to our normal sort of route, they decided to go straight back to England, which was very silly because, although we didn't know at the time, Coast Guard quite naturally had followed this ship, the little boat that was taking us off, and made absolutely sure that they intercepted us on the way back. And we got into a really ludicrous sort of, which seemed very exciting at the time, rather like a James Bond chase on the high seas, where we were about 3 miles from land, and the guy on the boat saying, "We're just about going to make it, full throttles, lads." And steaming up behind us with a great big bow wave was this Coast Guard's vessel. And they eventually all jumped on board and said, "Well, sorry to do this. We do actually listen to the station, but we have to arrest you for going out to Caroline, or, charge you under the Marine Offences Bill." And they took our name and addresses, and then eventually a few months later we had visits from a detective sergeant from the Home Office, and I gave a statement, which I needn't have done, but I did. And anyway, they said, "Well, you'll be hearing from us," and sure enough, I did get a summons to appear at Southend Magistrate Court. And I, along with a few other people, went along there, and I pleaded not guilty to the charge of, I can't remember the actual wording, but it was violating the Marine Offences Act as being a British subject broadcasting on the high seas from an illegal pirate station. Considering no one had actually been convicted under this charge, I thought it was worthwhile going through with it, so I pleaded not guilty. Everyone else pleaded guilty to it, and they got fined a certain amount, and that was the end of that. I pleaded not guilty, and then we decided to take it to the judge and jury, to the Crown Court, because that would give us the best chance of winning our case. And so it went to the Crown Court in Southend, and basically what happened is that I emerged not exactly victorious, but at least I wasn't convicted. I'm still a free man. And it was thrown out on a technicality because the Marine Offences Act was worded in such a way that it was open to a lot of interpretations. And our particular barrister just hit on something that was rather nebulously worded in the Act. Basically, it all came down to the fact that we contended that the broadcasts from Caroline were tape broadcasts.
There we are, quite an abrupt ending to that one. Nice one to open up the show with, too. Takes us back a few years, doesn't it?
Juicy Lucy and Who Do You Love?
Johnny Jason on Caroline.
I wouldn't dream of missing him. He's on every night between 7 and 10.
It's Johnny Jason.
That's right, thank you, Tony. I'll be here till 10 o'clock.
10 we have Andy Archer. 1 o'clock John B. Mayer. 4 o'clock in the morning it's the Cheshire Flyer, Peter Hayes, with half an hour's worth
Of very good soul and R&B and blues, so be sure you don't miss that programme. And 4:30 through until 6, Clive Carell. Got a lot of good
music lined up tonight. A bit of rock.
The way the Act was worded is that the only way they can arrest you for it is if they actually find you broadcasting live. Well, they didn't. And it is absolutely true that a lot of our material is taped because it's on the high seas. And obviously you can't be playing records in a force 9 gale. So I think that's really the sort of linchpin of the case. I can't remember the exact details of it, but that was what happened, and I was very pleased and relieved to get off that one.
Johnny Jason, playing music.
You're tuned to the voice of peace and good music, coming live from the North Sea all through the night on 259 meters medium wave.
Radio Caroline.
On April the 1st, 1976, it was as if listeners to 259 meters were imagining things. As an April Fool, Radio Mi Amigo adopted the name Veronica, with all their staff imitating famous Veronica DJs.
Dit is een nieuw station op een vertrouwde golflengte. Radio Veronica op 259 meter. Terug bij u in de huiskamer. Luisteraars, goedemorgen. Eerste programma op Radio Veronica.
Ding, dit is het programma van Lex Harding. Radio Veronica met het nieuws.
Techniek Piet Petrus, Stilis Bart van Leeuwen.
Just before 7 o'clock, Radio Mi Amigo explained that the whole day's programming had been a joke. But what had Caroline got up its sleeve that evening?
Isn't it good to know? Capital Radio. Turn on the friends, turn on the show, turn on the world with Capital Radio. That's a good way to make your day. Capital sounds go round and round, London round, up and down. It's the brightest sound in London town. Capital Radio into the London gap. It's into the London gap.
Susan Crofts, I'll play for you at 4 minutes past 7. Well, it's finally happened. They've got us. We're legal somewhere in London. Myself, Chris Elliott and James Ross. And it is April the 1st. That's about it, really, I think. Lovely Thursday spring evening. Thanks for the coffee, James. Chicago from their greatest hits album. And Make Me Smile.
Funky capital, London, can you dig it? Funky capital, London, can you dig it? Funky capital, London, can you dig it?
Well, I stood stone like at midnight.
Tonight's concert information, tonight being Thursday, the 1st of April, 1976. 7:30 at the London Palladium, John Denver is appearing, and Esther Phillips is at the London New Victoria Theatre. At the London Rainbow, the group that have records in the charts at 8 and 28, the Beatles. And that's the end of this concert information. There'll be a repeat of this information in 29 minutes' time at 8 o'clock.
for the Bee Gees from their album Main Course, and Nights on Broadway. And that's the Eagles, of course, title track from their album, One of These Nights. About just after 20 minutes to 8, Thursday the 1st of April, and another almost Eagles song, written by Glenn Frey and Jackson Browne.
One big joke. Having worked on Caroline myself, I can quite appreciate that the 1st of April 1976 must have been one heck of a lot of fun for those on board. The 18th of April was to be no joke, though. In fact, quite the opposite. For after over 3 years without an all-day English service, test broadcasts were made on 192 meters in a serious attempt to get Caroline back where she belonged, on the radios of British listeners. The test transmissions consisted of non-stop music and promotions for loving awareness.
The LA habit is there for each of us, at absolutely no cost. Try living the LA habit. You'll enjoy living in love.
Serving the European continent from the North Sea, this is the new Radio Caroline.
On the 15th of May, regular programming commenced in English 24 hours a day, but on different frequencies.
Throughout the day on 192 meters medium wave and through the night on 259, Europe's first and only album station, Radio Caroline.
Radio Caroline. 192 is due to go off the air right now, so maybe you could tune your radios into 259 meters in the medium wave band. The number for today is number 7. Number 7. I'm going to play for you now 5 tracks from Elton John from his album Paris. 8:45 here on Radio Caroline, 259 meters in the medium wave band with Samantha to take you through until 9 o'clock. Bob Dylan from his album John Wesley Harding, The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, especially for Norman Barrington. Tony Allen has just come downstairs to inform me that tomorrow is going to be yet another beautiful day, so tomorrow I'll be spending my time in the sun because I'm determined to get off this ship very, very, very brown to make everyone jealous on land, you see. 4 minutes to 9 here on Radio Caroline. Time for me to take leave of you. I'll be back with you tomorrow evening between 6 and 9. I hope you've had a pleasant evening and hope you enjoyed my program, and I'll see you tomorrow night at 6.
So once again, Caroline had achieved the ideal situation. With Radio Mi Amigo, by now well established in Holland and Belgium, and the new 192-meter English service gaining more listeners every day, a rosy future seemed assured. But one afternoon, it appeared as though trouble lay ahead with the sighting from the ship of a large tug from the City of London authorities heading straight for the Mi Amigo. This time, however, Caroline's brush with the law was to be of a more humorous nature. DJ Steve Kent was aboard the Mi Amigo at the time.
It was coming straight for us, and we thought, this is something out of the ordinary, because boats didn't usually come straight for us. And we sort of took cover behind various sort of things so we couldn't be seen. And sure enough, the tug came along and 3 people emerged on the roof of the tug, on this sort of bridge roof, with cameras, with electric winds, and they promptly sailed around the boat for about an hour and a half, taking literally hundreds of pictures. And we reappeared with paper bags with slits cut in them on our heads and sort of wandered round and sort of shouted at them and generally clowned around. And they just took photos of everything you could think of, from the tip of the mast to the bottom of its rudder, I should think, if it was visible. Samantha was on deck, and she decided that as they wanted a photograph of everything, they could have a photograph of everything. And she just turned round with her back to the boat, and she dropped her jeans and her panties and things and just gave them an eyeful. And you never heard the cameras click so fast, but that was the only communication, I think, that really existed between the Home Office and us, and I think they appreciated the gesture. I think one of the things one feels about the Home Office's attitude towards the boat was that it was a job of work for them. They were out there to keep an eye on it for various legitimate reasons. And so long as the boat and Caroline didn't do anything wrong, didn't go political, which we were always very careful to ensure we weren't political, and that so long as the boat wasn't doing anything outrageous in terms of shipping danger or anything like that, they were happy enough just to keep an eye on it. I think if we'd done something bad, like getting involved in a general election campaign, then I think we would have had a lot more pressure from the Home Office. But they respected, I think, the fact that we were there just to broadcast pop music, that we weren't a hazard, and that basically we were fairly sensible about our position.
From a point at sea to the circles in your mind, this is the new Radio Caroline.
On September the 11th, 1976, the Old Lady was swept from her moorings during a force 9 gale and drifted onto a sandbank. Air Sea Rescue and lifeboats were placed on standby, but the Caroline tender defied the odds, put to sea, and took off the crew and Dutch DJs. The English staff on board, 4 in number, decided to stay on the ship. On the 16th of September, the ship was back at her old position and on the air.
Caroline and Mi Amigo invite you to sail away on an ocean of love. 24 hours a day, Caroline and Mi Amigo sailing away on the love ship. And we'd like you to join us. It's easy. Just climb aboard the love ship and sail away.
Climb aboard the love ship and sail away. We won't get off until we reach those rosy days.
Caroline and Mi Amigo on 259 meters medium wave, sailing away on an ocean of love with you.
Thank you, Mi Amigo, for the last 12 hours of broadcasting. This is Radio Caroline, back on 259. Thin Lizzy from the album Jailbreak, and the boys are back in town. Yes, indeed, we're back in town. Radio Caroline back on 259 meters in the medium wave band. Must apologise for the last 3 or 4 days, or is it 5 days, without transmissions, but we have had some difficulties out here. The weather was rather rough a couple of days ago, and oh, I see. Yes, you can probably hear the work still going on. Actually, they're welding something. Don't quite know what it is. I'll let you know exactly what's going on. My name's Ed Foster. I'm here until 10 o'clock this evening, and then from 10 till 1 is Mark Florence. From 1 till 4 is Tom Anderson, and from 4 till 6 in the morning until Mi Amigo starts up again, it's yours truly, Ed Foster. It's 7 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock on Radio Caroline.
Radio Caroline.
James Harvest, Focus, Carole King, Janice. Shop all the albums you hear on Caroline. Go to Robbins Records, 12 Pottergate, Norwich in Norfolk, where you can save at least 60p on all full-price albums. Robbins Records always stock 5,000 titles. So for the albums you hear on Caroline, go to Robbins Records, 12 Pottergate, Norwich in Norfolk.
And like an older blues, before that was the Streetwalkers from their album Red Card, and between us, you're listening to Caroline. It's, where is it? It's 14 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock, and it's nice to be back on the air again. Like I say, I must apologise for the lack of transmissions over the last 4 days, but last weekend we had rather a storm, something like a force 9 or a force 10 gale. Can you have force 10 gales? I suppose you can. I think it was a force 9, and all the water sort of started coming in. It caused quite a lot of havoc in the studios, in the record libraries. I've had records drying by radiators for the last couple of days, and all the covers are sort of turning up corners and things, and all quite funny. Had to wash all the records, get all the salt off them so they'd play properly. So if some of the records that were playing all right before we went off the air decide to sound rather nasty, that's the reason. I think I've got rid of all the welding as well. Went upstairs and shut the hatch. But it's nice to be back in the saddle again, and that's the title of the next track from Aerosmith and the album Rocks.
Live from the North Sea on 259 meters each and every evening, the voice of Turned On Europe, Radio Caroline.
Sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline, sweet Caroline.
After having been back on the air for a couple of weeks, it was announced that Radio Mi Amigo and Caroline were to swap frequencies on the 11th of December.
Aanstaande zaterdag, 11 december, krijgt Radio Mi Amigo een nieuwe golflengte. 192 meter. Aanstaande zaterdag, 11 december, krijgt Radio Mi Amigo een nieuwe golflengte.
Since May 1976, Radio Caroline has been broadcasting on 192 meters, 1562 kilohertz during the day, and on 259 meters, 1157 kilohertz throughout the night.
As from 11 a.m. Saturday the 11th of December, Radio Caroline will broadcast on 259 meters, 24 hours per day.
To enable this change to take place, Radio Caroline will be off the air from 11 a.m. on Friday the 10th of December until 11 a.m. on Saturday the 11th of December.
We would like to take this opportunity of thanking you for listening to the 192 service of Radio Caroline and hope that you will stay with us on 259 meters throughout the day and the night.
Goedemiddag. Dit is Radio Mi Amigo Internationaal op 192 meter in de middengolf. Hetgeen overeenkomt met een frequentie van 1562 kilohertz. De MV Mi Amigo is Radio Mi Amigo Internationaal en is ook Radio Caroline. En laten we niet vergeten de jongens van Caroline te bedanken voor de enorme technische prestatie die zij gedaan hebben in de afgelopen 24 uur. Mi Amigo Internationaal op 192 meter is eindelijk een feit. En het komende uur wordt opgevuld door Bart van Leeuwen, het eerste uur bij Mi Amigo Internationaal. En straks ben ik bij u terug voor de eerste hitparade op 192 meter. Mi Amigo. Mi Amigo.
Radio Caroline.
Radio Caroline has more than 5 million listeners. That's more than any other commercial radio station in Europe.
Radio Caroline. Music.
Another frequency change was to take place on the 3rd of March 1977. Caroline closed down on 259 meters, but Radio Mi Amigo remained on 192. DJs on board at the time included James Ross and Mark Lawrence.
Tomorrow is Thursday the 3rd of March, and Radio Caroline will be closing down at 6 p.m. and will reopen 6 days later on Wednesday the 9th of March on a new wavelength of 319 meters, 953 kilohertz, which is just beneath Radio 4 on your radio dial. Once again, Radio Caroline is changing to 319 meters, 953 kilohertz on Wednesday the 9th of March.
Radio Caroline.
3.5 minutes to 6, which means it's goodbye time. That's it. It's all over, really. As I said, I can't impress on you enough. You must listen next week, Wednesday, March the 9th, new wavelength, 319 meters.
Caroline, Caroline, the only station that sounds fine all the time. It's Caroline. Love, peace of mind, coming to you on 319 Caroline. It's Radio Caroline. Radio Caroline.
319. With Radio Caroline safely ensconced on 319 meters, Radio Mi Amigo decided that they would make a move. They had been experiencing reception problems on 192 for quite some time and moved on the 23rd of July to 212 meters. But once again, trouble was waiting in the wings. On the 4th of August 1977, those on board the Mi Amigo noticed that the ship appeared to be taking water. DJs Roger Matthews and Steve Kent.
In the breakfast show, I was sitting there and felt the ship leaning a bit. I thought, oh, somebody's pumped the fuel out too much on one side. Didn't take much notice of it. And Herman de Graaf walks in. He says, oh, by the way, you've got a radiator leak. So I said, oh, how come? You know, he says, well, there's a puddle of water under the radiator in the record library. So we went out and looked, and I thought, there's a bit too much water there for a radiator leak. So immediately we set to work with the pumps to try and pump the ship out. Got the ship's bilge pumps going, and which weren't too bad, but it didn't really do much to the level for the water. It took us about an hour or so to get the standby pump working, a diesel pump. And when that was going all right, the water level went down a bit, and we started to feel a bit happy about the whole thing. And the engineer on board, he heard the pump going, and he comes running out of his cabin, you know, what's going on? So we tell him, and his first reaction, he ran up to the bridge and got on the radio to the Coast Guard, told them what was happening. Something which we didn't really want him to do, because in that situation it was better to leave it alone, you know, just cure your own problems. Anyway, instead of keeping a radio watch, he then came down with us, you know, to see what was going on. Meanwhile, when the Coast Guard hadn't heard anything more, they tried to call back after probably about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour, and then they were getting no answer, so they thought, have they sunk? So the next thing we saw was a police launch coming out of the mist towards us. Fortunately, it was quite a calm day.
This little boat appeared out of the mist, and these policemen on board, and we all thought, you know, we must hide again. It soon became obvious they didn't have cameras or anything like that, and they were just coming to see if we needed assistance, a sort of normal marine activity. And, in fact, they just sailed round a couple of times. We said, not at the moment, but please, you know, keep listening. And off they went into the mist again after making a few comments about the condition of the thing and how they were glad they were heading for home. And anyway, we kept going, and at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, the sirens on board went off. And this is a real fearsome noise, and it meant that something had happened to the generators, and all the power went.
Then the pump went, the standby pump died on us, which I had a habit of doing. So the water level started coming back up. We kept thinking we'd find a leak, and we'd rummage around in the bilges, you know, in the water, and we wouldn't find a leak. So we thought, well, it must be somewhere else. This was going on for hours. Meanwhile, they managed to get the standby pump going again, and so the water level started going down once more. We went to change over generators between the two generators, and I was standing by the one which was running at the time, and Otto, the sailor, went over to start the other one. And I was looking at him luckily from a certain angle. As I saw him trying to start the generator, I could see this glinting under the plates. And what had happened was a pipe in a very small box section in the ship, in the stringers on the ship, had burst. So even though the water was spraying out, you couldn't see it because it was so enclosed. And it was just fortunate that the light caught it at that angle, and I was standing where I was. So all we had to do in the end was just turn off the valves to the generators. But that in itself caused panic on land, because we kept the transmitters going all the time. We left the transmitters off for a while, and that while we sorted out the pipe and everything. And they sent out a plane from Belgium, and they were circling around us, and we were all on the back of the ship, having at this time sorted out the problem. And the people in the airplane, not knowing this, they were circling around us thinking we were sinking. We were all waving to them, trying to say, we're okay, you know, fine, no problem. And they were thinking we were waving for help, you know, trying to get off the thing or something. And I guess we heard later that they were really, you know, upset when they got back, thinking they were watching us sinking. But we came back on the air at about, I think it was around 8 o'clock when we eventually made it back on, under the general feeling of euphoria.
DJ Roger Matthews. Next week, in Caroline, Queen of the Pirates, changes occur within the organisation, which result in the closure of the station for about 6 months, and near death for the motor vessel Mi Amigo.
Loving awareness, Radio Caroline. Loving good music, Radio Caroline.
And so we come to the close of another day's transmissions from Radio Caroline 558. We trust you've enjoyed our programmes and will rejoin us sometime tomorrow. Our programmes commence at 5 o'clock.
Loving good music, Radio Caroline.
That was Caroline, Queen of the Pirates, a series in 13 parts tracing the history of the world's best-known offshore radio station, Radio Caroline. The producer wishes to thank East Anglian Productions of Frinton, Essex, for their valuable assistance in the making of this program. The series is produced and presented by Dave Windsor.